Hey everyone, in this video we'll be looking at Chapter 12 of Peopleware, which is called Bring Back the Door. In their ongoing quest to debunk the various aspects of the OpenOffice floor plan, the authors are next going after the door, or more specifically the lack of it, and are going to use this chapter to advocate bringing them back to the modern office. The trend towards open offices has generally been unhindered because no one has attempted to stop it. The proponents of saving money via more compact workspaces assert, either explicitly or implicitly, that productivity isn't hindered at all by stacking people so close together. But it is time to push back on that. For starters, the authors suggest polling the people on your team about the effect of the noise around them. This would result in an explicit and public conversation being created at the organizational level about what those effects are and how they might be remedied. If it does come out that people prefer quieter working conditions and more privacy, there are three objections that are likely to come up, and they are as follows. First, people don't care about office space except for political reasons. Second, there are cheaper ways to deal with this problem, such as playing white noise or some other frequency that is conducive to productivity. Finally, the third objection is that enclosed office spaces are isolating from other humans, which isn't optimal since we do want people to work together and create that magical synergy that comes from communicating. So let's address these three one by one. So for the first objection, that people don't care about office space is in some ways accurate and in some ways inaccurate. In particular, when asked about things like decorations and fixtures, employees have tended to respond that it doesn't make too much of a difference to them. But not caring about appearances doesn't mean that there aren't some things that they do care about, and in particular, noise is one that they do tend to have strong negative feelings towards. It is too bad that the desire for a private office comes across as a desire for status, when in reality it is likely a desire for quiet, though the two are of course not mutually exclusive. For the second objection, the one about there being cheaper alternatives to silence like white noise or focus music, is analogous to treating the symptoms rather than the cause of the pain. It's like unplugging the check engine light in a car. Now, it's very common for people to listen to music when working, so whether it's playing throughout the office or just in one's headphones, is this such a bad outcome? The authors say yes, and cite a study from Cornell where two groups of engineers were given a task for data manipulation. One group listened to music of their choosing and the other worked in silence. In terms of speed and accuracy, there wasn't a noticeable difference. However, there was a phenomenon present in that challenge, which was that the outputs always equaled their inputs. Some people noticed this while others did not, and of the ones that did, the majority came from the quiet room. This is because the left brain is responsible for analytical and sequential tasks, which is the majority of office work, and the right brain is the side that takes in music. As a result, there's no conflict between the two, thus resulting in the no difference in speed and accuracy. However, since the right brain is occupied when listening to music, it isn't engaged with the primary task at hand, and thus isn't available for the creative leap associated with discerning that this pattern exists. Now, because creativity isn't something utilized all the time, it's hard to see what the net impact would be on a person's or a team's productivity over the course of time. Nevertheless, it is present, and the lack of it is a hit to the effectiveness and excitement of one's work. For the final objection, that people shouldn't work in a vacuum from each other, as a private office would suggest, the authors posit that offices don't need to be private and indeed could each host 2 to 4 people. Ideally, they'd be configured in such a way that the people who need to interact with each other the most would be stationed together, and this is a reasonable assertion. Anecdotally, of the teams that I've worked on, regardless of large or small, I've tended to spend the most amount of time with a very limited number of people. This might be more or less suitable depending on a given person's role in the organization and how their interactions are distributed. For example, this might not work well for a person who is interacting with stakeholders all day across large chunks of an organization, but in my experience, such an arrangement is friendly towards engineers' productivity. The diagnosis of the chapter is thus: the people should be given an opportunity to organize themselves into pods or office suites since they know who they'll most need to work with. But the authors say this idea is unlikely to take off because it challenges the uniformity enforced by rows of desks, and thus the authority of the farmer who presides over them all.